Hey, we are Ann and John from Pulse, and we help marketers understand their audience. And today we are here to talk about how to get more ROI from your digital experience platform. We're going to cover some ways to do that. First, by ditching the vanity metrics that you are presently using and making sure that you're measuring true engagement. And two, by measuring uplift and actually starting to personalize using accessible personalizations that you can start with today. Then, if you're cool with it, we're also going to walk through a tool that we built that helps you personalize from that first anonymous visit. So we want you to stop using your digital experience platform like this.
Yeah, we've been in the services space around this for about 10 years. And one thing that we have seen over and over again are organizations spending hundreds of thousands of dollars and multiples of that on implementation and hosting and support and security and everything else, only to go on and use these powerful platforms like a brochure site, not implementing even the simplest of personalizations. And we would like to see and help you get to doing that.
Yep. And so we will help you to get the ROI that you were promised by using more of the advanced functionality and showing you ways that it's really not that scary. So let's dive in. The first step in this process is to stop believing your own BS. We want you to ditch the vanity metrics like time on site and stuff like that. And we want to actually measure true engagement.
We all know an executive or two that has the marketing team at some point chasing their tails, chasing vanity metrics that really don't mean anything to the task at hand. As marketers, our job is to engage with our customers in a meaningful way, to create a personal bond, to get people to convert, to get people to buy stuff from us, and to make them want to buy things, from us in the future. And those are typically purposes that are not well served by making sure that everybody watches the CEO video.
And the way that you do want to measure true engagement is by taking a look at the digital goals that you have set up on your site. So even if you run a B2B site and you aren't able to actually close the funnel and track somebody through from their first entrance to the site all the way through to purchase, there are lots of things that people can do to give you signals that they are interested in the content and the products and services that you have. And so by tracking how often your most engaged visitors are interacting with the ebooks that you've put out there and the white papers and the online tools, you're able to get a true sense of how engaged your individual customers are.
So what we know and what the data bears out is that roughly 3/4 of the people that are coming to visit your site expect you to personalize to them based on the information that you have. And beyond that, they get frustrated, or they're going to go to your competitor's site if they're doing that. They don't want to come and have to search for everything from scratch. They want you to know what they're looking for, or at least know what they're about.
Yeah, we have a specific example of this in the Pulse family. We have a project manager who was totally type A and was going through and making a purchase for an iPhone. And so she was super excited about it, went through, added it to cart, checked out, got the confirmation message, was waiting for it to arrive. And then whenever she would go back to the Apple site and all the emails that she were getting were pitching this new phone to her that she just purchased. And so she actually felt physical anxiety over this and went and logged into her bank account to make sure that they had actually withdrawn the funds and double checked that the shipment was actually on its way. And this was totally a missed opportunity to provide complimentary services and content that would have made her more excited about the purchase instead of questioning whether or not they even knew who she was. So, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of going to I bought a car from a dealer. I gave them my email address as a part of the purchase. Overnight, they entered it into the CRM, and the next morning, what did I get? I started to get a stream of emails inviting me. Is it time to upgrade? Are you looking for a new ride? Like all the wrong messaging, completely tone deaf, considering that they knew on a long sales cycle for a high ticket item, I should be in the support phase. They should be supporting that new purchase as opposed to trying to sell me exactly what I just walked out of the showroom with.
And so another example that is also a source of frustration, we've all pre-COVID days, back when we used to stay at hotels, have sat at the end of a hotel bed trying to figure out how we could get our loyalty numbers to get onto the hotel Wi-Fi. And I hate this. There's nothing more frustrating than not being able to connect and needing something that you have to look up online. So you're by the window trying to set up a hotspot on your phone and just livid.
You do not know her until you have seen her with the internet.
And I do have an example of a great personalization that brought me tremendous joy. So a couple of years ago at a hotel that I stayed at fairly regularly, I came back, I had just checked in, went up to my room, and then boom, here's a personalized message. Welcome back. We know you're here. Connect now. And that's all I had to do was click that little confirmation button and I was off to the races. So that is an example of a really good personalization that's easy and that I still remember 2 years later.
Yeah, and such a simple thing. And she decides where we all stay whenever we go anywhere. So we're all Marriott kids now. One thing that we hear people talk about a lot is this fear of creeping people out with personalizations. And that's akin to me being worried about running a 7-minute mile. It's not going to happen. We're all beginners here. Target did an absolutely fantastic job implementing machine learning and some pattern matching, and they were able to deduce, in some cases, whether somebody was expecting. And in one case, they outed a young lady in front of her dad. They printed a bunch of coupons that only an expecting mother would use. And well, anyway, it turned into a media story, and it was a whole thing. And everybody in marketing, you guys are probably familiar with it. But we're not at risk of doing that here. I think that it's safe to say the best thing that we could all do is just get started.
79% of consumers agree that the more personalization tactics a brand uses, the more loyal they are to that actual brand. And so people want us to take their information and their purchase history and then use it to tailor the experience so that they're getting the content that they actually want to consume.
Yeah, it's 81% of people who visit your site are willing to trade personal information in order to make the whole experience more frictionless. And 83% of them are willing to do it if you are open and honest about how you're going to use their data.
So it's time to stop worrying and actually get started with your personalization. So the good news is that it's not too late to get started. So the data bears out that only 15% of CMOs believe that their company's on the right track with personalization. So even though consumers want it, it's not so ubiquitous in all industries that you're behind the curve if you're not implementing it. So that's another thing that we see in our workshops a lot, is that everyone thinks, everybody else is doing this so well right now and we're just behind the ball and we just can't get our act together. And that's not the case. There are a lot of people that are struggling with personalizations, and the content in this webinar is meant to help inspire you and give you some ideas on how you can start personalizing and using that advanced functionality right now.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, if you canvass all the CMOs, which has been done, and ask them how many of them wish that their organizations was doing it, everyone wishes that they were doing it. They're all hoping that one of their marketers is going to magically start doing it. And so we recommend that person to be you.
All right. So one of the key things to keep in mind is knowing where to implement your personalizations. So when somebody comes to your site and they visit from one of your deeper pages, so one of the more tailored, niche-focused pieces of content that you have, you want to gather that information and then use that information on your higher level pages that get more traffic. So if somebody is really focused on a technical topic and then they navigate back in that same session or in a new session to the homepage of your site, you can reflect their interests and help them get to the content that they're looking for by doing personalizations on those highly trafficked, more generic pages.
Yeah, and highly trafficked is the key. So it's really important to make sure that when you're doing an A/B test, we're going to talk a lot of A/B testing. If you're doing an A/B test, you need to have you're collecting enough data in a short enough period of time that you can actually see what's going on. And so it's important to do that testing on high traffic pages. So you wouldn't do an A/B test on one of the deep pages in the site that only gets visited, once or twice a week. You want to go to the homepage where you've got thousands of visitors, and you can get a meaningful, statistically significant result.
Yeah, in a reasonable amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And then one thing to note is that we talk about A/B testing and personalizations together all the time because you don't want to do personalizations unless you are measuring uplift.
Yeah.
So of those marketers that are implementing personalizations and have the ability to measure uplift, they're seeing between a 5 and 15% increase in conversions on personalized content. And so it's really important, in order to prove out that ROI and to figure out if your optimizations are working, that you actually measure the difference between what generic content gives you for conversions and what your personalized content gives you.
Yeah, in the e-com environment, obviously, that's the easiest environment because you can follow them through from their first touch to conversion and you know the value of their cart, you know exactly what that's worth to you. It's a little bit trickier when you're working in a B2B or a B2C environment where you don't have the ability to close the funnel, where maybe you're doing brand awareness online and then people are buying something in a store. In that case, you have to turn to your experience platform to provide for that ability to measure engagement in other ways.
Yeah, so you want to take a look at things like how much value does it bring to you as a marketer when somebody signs up for a newsletter versus when somebody creates a new membership profile or somebody actually makes a purchase. And so in your digital experience platform, it's possible to score these pieces of content and these micro conversions so that even if you're not able to close that funnel, you can still measure that trailing value of engagement. It's really important to make sure that you are measuring from the beginning, because if you do have one of those CEOs or executives that has a pet metric, it's nice to be able to go in and say, okay, so we performed this A/B test and our hypothesis was this, and this is what the data bears out. And you can use those with micro conversions to pave the way for some of the other personalizations that you want to implement. So let's look at a specific example of a brand that really is using A/B testing and personalization to measure uplift for the things that are important to their business. So Danone Nutritia is a global brand that does early childhood nutrition from conception all the way up to 2 years of age. And they really guide people through the journey on their site with lots of content. And they take information from when somebody first visits the site and they're looking at various articles that would indicate what part of the cycle they're in. And then they use that information on the higher level pages to try to drive the conversions for the things that matter.
So here's a really good example of where you can learn so much about a visitor by where they enter the site. So at Danone, they're able to see whether people are looking at becoming pregnant or hoping to become pregnant, whether they are currently pregnant or whether they're rearing a toddler running around the house. And they can use that information to tailor the kinds of CTAs that they're going to use in the main site. And through doing this, they saw almost a 40% uplift in conversions. And in their case, the conversions are important because most of their purchases are made in brick and mortar stores. And so they're looking for brand engagement and brand loyalty. And that's how they measure value.
Yeah. So another example is for creating profiles on the site, they A/B tested giving a free gift away and not giving a free gift away, and they were able to see a huge uplift in the free gift option. And so they can take that information in future pieces of content and then optimize for what their business values, which is being able to nurture that ongoing relationship with new mothers and their families.
Yeah, and in most cases, a few percent, if you can push the needle around by a few percent on an e-com site, if you're doing $10 million a year and you push it up by 3%, I mean, your top line revenues pushed up by $12,000 ish. So proving out the ROI of the experience platform that you're using and the tools that you use to support that, as well as you, is where you want to go. And so if it's measurable, then you can do that. And Danone pushing results in the 20 to 30%, 40% range. These are huge numbers, and they're doing this with, granted, they're methodical and they're running at least 20 or so experiments in parallel all the time and measuring, but these are phenomenal numbers. And these are the kinds of numbers that you want to deliver upstairs.
Yep. And so this is an example of what it feels like when personalization is done right. So like John said, the team works really hard to make sure that they're constantly testing and iterating and optimizing, and they've been able to see tremendous uplift throughout these efforts.
Yeah, great example of how to get it done.
All right, so let's talk through how personalization works in Sitecore specifically. So for every component that you have on a page, you have the ability to show it or hide it based on a phenomenal number of rules. You can change the data source to bubble up different content or change the CTAs depending on various things that you know about the person or where they're coming from. And so there is a ton of opportunity to dive in and start with some low risk personalizations that will help you dip a toe into some of the advanced functionality and start measuring uplift for your personalized content.
So the ability to personalize is either baked into the digital experience platform that you have, or it's easily available to you through readily available like third-party tools. And there are a ton of those, and we're not going to dive into all of those now. Point being, it's available to you right now to start personalizing. And so let's look at a few ways that we can make some baby steps. First one, what visit is it for them? Was this their first visit or the first visit that you're seeing? Say hi. Second visit, go crazy. Say welcome back. If they're back a third time or they're diving into deeper pages on the site, then maybe it's time that you want to engage with them or ask for a little bit more. Go for a deeper engagement. Ask them if they want to connect with somebody online. Maybe they're looking for a newsletter. The CTA is available to you, or pick what you want, but go for something a little bit better.
Yep. And even on this first visit, we're going to get into a little bit later. It is possible from, that cold start to be able to use some information that you know about where they're coming from in order to change the message that appears to them, even if they're anonymous and you don't have any of that behavioral context yet. Another personalization tactic that you can use is what kind of device are they coming in on? Because that can tell you a lot about their state of mind, how much time they have, and what they're interested in doing. So if you are a brick and mortar retail store and you have somebody that is in your store location on your guest Wi-Fi and they're on a mobile device, you're going to show them different content, hopefully, than somebody who is lounging at home 100 miles away from your nearest store. And it's really easy to go through and take a look at, okay, what device are they coming in on? And are they in my store? So I can show them things that are relevant to them. Or if they're trying to catch a flight and you know that they are on a mobile device, then you want to bubble up the information for their specific travel itinerary at this time on their mobile device.
It might be in your industry that somebody coming to your site late on a Saturday night, if you sell a technical device, there's a good chance you're looking at a frustrated person who's looking for an answer that might be in need of immediate support versus somebody during the weekday who might be looking for something to buy. These are things that you can use to personalize, again, to A/B test and see which one gets more engagement. You're running little experiments to see which one gives you what kind of uplift.
So another cool personalization tactic that is near and dear to our heart because of Pulse is looking at the actual location of where somebody's coming from. So this could be as easy as personalizing an East Coast image versus a West Coast image in the US.
Or if you're using Pulse, personalizing based on the ethnographic makeup of the neighborhood, or using social listening to determine the kinds of things that they talk about online. So if you're talking to somebody who's coming from a neighborhood that's full of dog lovers, it could be as simple as rotating out and putting in your hero image with a dog on the cover. I love these. So one of the things that you can do, and in a lot of these digital experience platforms, is profile your content or use a third-party tool like IDEO to profile your content for you and score the content according to what it's about. And so then as somebody wanders around your site consuming the content that's of interest to them, you can learn a ton about what they're looking for and then bubble that up to those high volume pages and perform personalizations right there.
And
So
the data that you get, that is also really cool. So you can go through and see, okay, people who are interested in this specific product tend to convert and consume this content first. And so if we look at those patterns in the data, then we can actually bubble up the content that leads to conversion earlier. So it's good for real-time personalizations, and then also for taking a look at the analytics to figure out what content should I show them.
Yeah, I remember back, Sitecore Cortex was pushing to do time series and interrogating that time series data and using machine learning to figure out whether somebody with a probability that they were going to make a purchase in a given time horizon. And if somebody who was good of 85% or better chance of converting in the next 14 days, give them something small to help push them over the line. Like we do with the abandoned carts today. If somebody abandoned something in their cart, you send them a coupon that afternoon or the next day. So same kind of thinking, but this time applied to the kinds of content that they're consuming.
Yep. So explicit data matches are things that can often be overlooked, and it really does have value to consumers of today who are expecting personalizations, and they're more likely to buy from brands and from retailers that recognize them by name and know their purchase history. Think about your loyalty to Amazon Prime potentially, where they know everything about me pretty much. Between Amazon and Google, they've got it all.
Or another good example is just Amazon's little drop down. If you're picking one thing, they give you a 3-pack. You probably want filters and something else to go with the vacuum cleaner that you're looking at. Saves you time, and it's an explicit data match personalization that's easy to implement.
Yep. So we talked about digital goals before. It's also key to take into account the digital goals that somebody has achieved on the site. So if somebody signs up for your newsletter, you want to make sure that you're repurposing that real estate for the next thing that you want them to do in their customer journey, and making them, feel heard, and they're not going to see that same CTA. They're going to see something else that would be relevant to them for other content that would be of value. So making sure that you look at the digital goals that a person has achieved and then tailoring the experience based on that is also really easy. You can show and hide different pieces of content. You can change what lead magnet is visible based on whether or not somebody has achieved a specific goal.
If they've already signed up for your newsletter, don't ask them to sign up for your newsletter again. That's valuable real estate. That's your CTA real estate. It should be above the fold. It's, some of the most prized real estate on the screen. Don't use it for something that you've already got. If they've already signed up for the newsletter, then get them to download a brochure or sign up for a demo or whatever it is that fits the vertical and what you're trying to sell.
Yeah, HubSpot really spearheaded this kind of back in the day with the smart forms.
Forms, yeah.
Making sure that you're just asking for a new piece of information that somebody might be willing to trade for a piece of valuable content.
Oh, yeah, that's actually, that's super cool. Don't trade them, in the little micro transaction that you're doing to trade them for a little bit of information about themselves or their interests. Don't ask them for the same things again. And you see it time and time again, but you can tell people who are doing it right because they've implemented that.
Another neat personalization tactic is to take a look at the campaigns that people are coming in from. So if you have a really successful Instagram post or Facebook post or an ad campaign that you're running, you should make sure that you're maintaining the same imagery and language and focus for the campaign as somebody's going through the site. So tailor the look and feel and the content that appears based on what you know they're interested in, based on what actually attracted them to your site in the first place.
So another thing that you can watch for is that certain different kinds of people like different kinds of content. Some people are readers, some people are really visual, some people like video. If you know that somebody is consuming tons of video on the site, then that's a great way to engage with them. That's the language that they speak. If they're a reader, if they're a white paper person, well, then that's the kind of content that you want to present to them. And that is all usually easily personalizable across channels. So if you're using Sitecore and EXM, you can personalize the type of asset that you offer them. So have 3 different kinds of assets and all telling the same story, but in 3 different formats, and give people feature the one that they consume most readily, and then give them the 2 other options underneath.
Yeah, like, oh, you speak PowerPoint. Oh, you speak spreadsheet.
Yeah. You speak spreadsheet. She speaks spreadsheet.
So you can tell a lot about a person by looking at their search history. And so you should take that information and use it for personalizations on the site. If you have technical content that somebody's looking for support on, or you have blog posts, you can use the insights that you get from those search terms and be able to then bubble up the content that would be of most interest to that person.
We know it can seem like a lot, and we know that only a small percentage of digital marketers are actively personalizing now, and about half of them, a little more than half of them, are having a hard time figuring out what to do, how to measure that engagement, how to get going. And so if you would like to stay on now, we built Pulse, and Pulse is a tool that helps you understand your digital audience by looking at ethnographics and demographics of the neighborhood, as well as using social listening and machine learning to learn about what people in those neighborhoods are talking about online. And so what that does is it solves for 2 problems. One is it enables you to personalize from the cold start, where someone's coming to your site for the first time and you don't know anything about them. Now you do, now a whole pile. And the personalization rules, they feed right into the existing engine that you're using probably today. And so that you can plug Pulse in and then just start personalizing based on the kind of audience that you see.
Yep. All right. So Pulse is a tool that helps you understand your audience and then speak to your visitors like them even from the first visit. And it does this by identifying the neighborhood that your visitor is coming from, and then looking at the demographic and ethnographic breakdown of that neighborhood. So things like median age and income and homeownership rates. And then it layers on social listening information, which is anonymized and not as scary as it sounds.
Okay. Anonymized social listening works like this. We take billions of data points from social media posts that are geotagged by the people who posted them. So we look at Twitter, Foursquare, Instagram, Facebook, basically anything that's tagged with a latitude and longitude. The next thing we do is we strip out all of the personally identifiable information, and then we feed that into a machine learning algorithm that automatically classifies them by group. And then finally, an ethnographer goes in and labels those segments by the kind of glue that holds them together. And what Pulse does is it converts that into a format that you can use as a digital marketer to personalize for your audience in real time.
Yeah. So let's take a look at a specific example. So let's say you run an e-com site and you get a first-time visit from a place called Paradise Valley, Arizona. So if you're not a local, you may not know that this is a well-off neighborhood. It's predominantly white, 100% home ownership rate, and they have a median income of $300,000 per year. So not surprisingly,
these guys have a lot of money and they like to talk about it online. So their top segments in Pulse are wealth signaling and happily ever after. Makes sense.
And so let's contrast this to another first-time visitor that comes to us from less than 500 miles away in Moab, Utah. So the demographic here is slightly younger. There is a lower median income and homeownership rate, and they are more into their outdoor adventures. And so these are dirty hippies, mountain bikers and skydivers. Yeah, they like to talk about their adventures online.
These are our kind of people.
Yeah. And so through the power of Pulse, we have the ability to take these two previously unknown visitors and then speak to them differently, even from their first visit. So the message that we are going to show to the person that comes from Paradise Valley can be tailored to what we know their surroundings are like, and the person from Moab can see another message that's totally different. And so as a marketer, here's what it looks like on the map. So you can pick the time period, and then you see the hot spots where you get the most traffic, and you can see how your top segments change over time, which is super cool.
Yeah, and there's a lot of cool stuff going on in here. It's normalized to the population, so we're not drowning out traffic from the city. For most people, when you're looking at this, or if you go into Google Analytics today, you're going to see lots of traffic from where there are lots of people. And when you do that, you lose the subtle signals that you get from rural areas. And there are a lot of brands that really want to sell into those rural or semi-rural areas where there's maybe not a ton of social media traffic, but could reflect a genuine interest in your brand.
Yeah, there's also a really cool infographic view that you can take a look at so that you can dive deep into each segment to view more of the correlations with, age and political leanings, even the hashtags and emojis that they use when they're online. So there's really a wealth of information on these individual segments that can help inspire you as a marketer to create more content and to come up with other personalizations that you can apply even from that first visit.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I think is really cool about Pulse is that we use a machine learning algorithm to study your baseline traffic day to day, hour to hour. And if it sees an abnormal spike in traffic for that day or that month, whatever that period of time is, it sends you a real-time alert. And we subtract the baseline traffic and look for what the differences are between your baseline traffic and this pulse in traffic that you've just received. And what that means is that we can say, wow, you just got a whole pile of new traffic and it's from dog lovers. And so as a marketer, that means that you can create content for those dog lovers and get it online, chase that Instagram post or whatever it is that went viral and push this pulse your way and take maximum advantage of it. Ride that wave as you're building it. And that's a really powerful tool, especially when you consider that for the social media posts that we work so hard to create, the waves that they generate only last for maybe 24 to 48 hours. So you don't have a month to go back and respond to them.
Yeah. Then the other really cool feature that we have is a location explorer, so that you can take a look at lookalike locations where you've already achieved success and figure out where your next campaign or event should be held. And so we can view really detailed demographic information and take a look at the similarities in social listening as well. So we can pinpoint where you're getting a lot of traffic and where your content is really resonating, and then where it should be, but people just haven't heard about you yet.
Yeah, it's really cool as a digital marketer to have a list of locations that we should target next. You're doing well in these 5 places. Here are 5 other places where they're so similar to the places where you're doing well, but they just haven't heard about you yet. So that's a great opportunity to do a geofenced Google or Facebook campaign for short dollars and get real returns.
And so Pulse provides an easy way for you to analyze your traffic, and we don't use any personal information or household level data. So you're 100% respecting the privacy of the visitors that are coming to your site, but being able to use really deep insights about their surroundings and the characteristics of the neighborhood that they're coming from.
Yeah, we built Pulse from the ground up to be GDPR and CCPA compliant, and we built it out of our foundational principle at Coria and at Pulse is to use data for good. And we really wanted to find a way to do meaningful personalization without using any personally identifiable information or infringing on the privacy of the visitors to our site through things like pixeling and fingerprinting or anything like that.